Bit of a pregame show today. A little bit of a pregame show. We go officially live at 6 o'clock. And unfortunately, Steve's broadcast had a few little technical difficulties. So we want to make sure that this one's going to go off without a hitch. And we've got Ken in the house. He's first. Someone told me that it will be cookies and coffee. There you go, cookies and coffee today. Why not? And we do have a special guest coming into the show. And again, the official start time of the show is 6 o'clock. And let me just make sure I've got my Skype all ready to go and spooled up here. And hopefully we are. And yes, Leah is here, ready to go. So hopefully I'll take that call when she's ready. And in the meantime, let me show you. She goes under the handle Girl Gone Crypto, and that's her Twitter right there. And first name's Leah, and this is, that's a video we're going to talk about. And that is her website, leahlovescrypto.com. And this is her Instagram. So girl_gone_crypto, right? Okay, so, and it's girl_gone_crypto on Twitter. So there you go. And we're going to talk about, this is going to be another controversial broadcast because Bitcoin is at about, let me see what it's at now. It was around 9,700 earlier. And according to this, it's 97.64 live as we speak. And so Bitcoin has gotten back into that realm where you can actually buy, for the price of one Bitcoin, you could theoretically buy a Rolex Submariner or a Rolex Submariner Date. Certainly at list price, you could buy either one of those, and probably even with the market the way it is right now, probably in the gray market, you might be able to buy one of those. Maybe some folks can let me know in the chat what the Rolex Sub and what the Rolex Submariner Date are selling for right now in the marketplace, so we can get a handle on that. And so we're going to talk about okay, let's say you've got enough money to buy a Rolex Submariner. Would it be wise to instead buy one Bitcoin, just one single Bitcoin, for the price of that watch, and then sit on that Bitcoin for a while and maybe double or triple your money? What do you think? Ken's in the house, and Brett says BTC is breaking out as we speak. And Carlos says, hello, Craig and all. Williams Watches says hello. Lance is in the house. So a lot of the usual suspects are coming in early for this pregame show. And Carlos says hello to Williams. So, and by the way, I want to, as far as Steve's show, I think he is having some internet connectivity issues. And hopefully we'll be able to sort that out and he can get that guest back, because that was a fascinating discussion that was just interrupted in midstream there. So hopefully we can get that worked out. Let me do a time check while I clean my glasses here. They got a couple of smudges on them. Don't like smudges on the glasses, folks. You youngsters don't have to worry about that because you all don't need the spectacles to read. Let's see here. Triforce Rich, I believe in the counterculture investing. Everyone is getting hot on BTC. It's going to have a big dip soon enough. Buy the dip. Absolutely. When it has the dip, buy the dip, I say. Buy the dip. And Lance is in the house. The Rolex is better, says Lance. He wants to go for the Rolex. They don't really lose value, so you would sell it. So you could sell it in a few years. Yeah, but don't you want to make money with your investments, Lance? Isn't that the point? Making money, not losing money. Don't you want your investment to go up? What about that? And by the way, Rolexes aren't that easy to sell, especially anymore. Triforce Rich, the whales are loving the hype and are going to sell and screw all those new coiners. Will not matter for firm hands like Craig. Well, people buy and people sell. I think what's happening, I'll tell you what I think is happening. I think Bitcoin is becoming more distributed all the time. I think there are new buyers coming in, and there is data to support this, by the way. I think there are new buyers coming into the system that are first-time buyers that do have strong hands, that are just buying some Bitcoin and sticking it away for the long term. And of course, the early adopters, the whales, have thousands of Bitcoin. Of course, they're going to cash in from time to time and sell some of those. But as they become more distributed through that process, then the price will slowly but surely stabilize more and more. And of course, it will also go up. And so there's also evidence that some high net worth individuals are starting to come into the space. And so when we hear from Leah, we'll try to see if we can get some inside scoop from her on some of these things, and we'll see how all of this goes. And Cheetown's in the house. He says, "Hey, William, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens the rest of 2020 and into 2021, because we know the halving just happened, and we know that typically the run-up usually doesn't start until like about a year after the halving. That's typically the way this works. And here we're starting to get a little bit of a run-up early, a lot sooner than that. And here's the other thing that's interesting is the stock market was down yesterday and was pretty much flat today, and yet Bitcoin is on a tear. So it's almost like Bitcoin has finally broken loose from the stock market and is doing its own thing, which is very interesting, because there are investors that want investments that are not correlated to the typical investments, typical equities that you would buy, stocks, houses, things like that. They typically do look for things that are not correlated, and that might be Bitcoin. Triforce Rich is in the house. I think the whales are going to collude, sell, and crash the coin and rebuy, making the profits off all the new coiners. They can try to do that, but there's pressure both ways, right? When they try to sell and force the market down, there are people that step in and buy the dip. And so I think as time goes on, and I think we've seen this, I think it's getting harder and harder for them to manipulate the market. I think it was easier a couple of years ago for them to manipulate the market than it is now. So it's all getting very, very interesting. Lance, you have a lot to learn, young man, says Brett. Brett in the house. And Brett is kind of still a young man too. So there you go. I think it's really cool, all these young folks that are in the space, that are getting into the Bitcoin space. I think it's really cool. And I'll tell you another thing. I think there's evidence that there are a bunch of boomers that are starting to look at this space and starting to come in. And as Mike Novogratz has said, he's been saying for a while, the herd is coming, right? That's his thing. The herd is coming. And up until now, they really haven't. They really haven't come, right? And now he's starting to see some evidence that they are actually on the way, that the herd is coming. And the thing about Bitcoin is the amount that's available for buyers to buy is so limited that you don't have to have that many new buyers come into the space to give you that upward pressure on the price, to push that price up. It doesn't take that much. And so, and that also is why it's so volatile on the downside too, because again, if a bunch of people sell, it doesn't take that much to force the price down. So it's very, very interesting that what we're going to watch and what we're going to see going on here. Okay, so let me catch up on the comments here. Anyone who would rather have a Rolex than a BTC is delusional, says Brett. You'd rather have a date, Brett. Cheetown, I don't like the look of the current sub, and it's going for 10 grand gray market, so I'd rather take the 10K and buy an Oyster Special 39 and spend the difference on Bitcoin. Cheetown, bringing some logic to the discussion. That's very interesting. No, I'd rather have more BTC. Let's see. Scott's in the house. My girlfriend is sitting next to me and bought crypto for the first time last month, a small amount of BTC. She's keen for your guest also. Cool, Scott in the house. All right, Scott, do you have any BTC? Do tell. Lance is in the house. Some Rolexes can be good investments. Rolex Hawk, not really. No, if you do the math, none of them are really good investments. So, because they're not going to double on average every 7 years. A good investment, if an investment returns 10% per year, it's going to double about every 7 years. So let's say if you invest $10,000 today, 7 years later it should be $20,000, and then 7 years after that it should be $40,000. And so the Rolexes do not keep up with that. You know, even if you had a red sub back in the day, it doesn't keep up with that, right? Even if you could have a time machine and go back and buy the most desirable Rolexes, unless it's a celebrity-owned watch, you know, that's a different thing. But you're paying for the celebrity, not for the watch. But for the most part, none of them will give those kind of returns. So you got to learn how to do the math. Do the math on it. Let's see. Have you ever bought a Rolex and made a profit that's worth talking about? Trust me, I've had many Rolex and only due to really knowing a model buying right have I got my money back. Exactly. It's very difficult to make money in the watch game. I just don't look at any watch as an investment. Good move. I learned about Bitcoin too late. I missed it when it could have been had for super cheap. It's not too late. It's still very early in the game. Very few people own Bitcoin. So it's still very early in the game. The Hulk is not an investment, Lance. It's a speculative asset bought on by an artificially inflated market. Cheatown in the house. And that's hard to trust. Okay, speculative asset. And Scott's in the house. Yes, I do. I own 3 BTC. Scott in the house. He's in the elite. Anybody that has more than 1 Bitcoin is in the elite. And Brett says, still a good time to add Lewis. Market cap is still small. Exactly. Cheatown, California, absolutely, buddy. Same goes for all Rolex, in my opinion. I agree with you on this, Craig, absolutely. Williams Watches is in the house. And Brett says, nice, Scott, okay. Triforce Rich, Rolex can be good short-term investment. Check the price in 2 years. On the Milgauss Z Blue, I think you can make 30% if you buy today. I wouldn't count on that. I sure as heck wouldn't count on that. Depending on where the economy goes, you might lose half of your money. All right, so we are caught up on the comments, and we will see. Let me just check my messages here to see if Leah is ready to come in, and then we can bring her in. All are live and ready for you. Okay. All right. So, and then after we do a quick interview with Leah, we're going to talk about some other things. I did dig around, and I actually had straps. It's unfortunately Durr's not in the chat here. I had some straps from the gentleman in Vietnam that he recommended. And this is just a plain, oh, Leah's in the house. There you go. She's in the chat. And we just had a little bit of a pregame show, Leah, and we did talk about your social media, and I showed them here on the screen. Matter of fact, I'll run through those again, and you can call in whenever you're ready on the Skype. We are ready for you, and I think the folks are going to have some questions for you. But let me just go through real quick here and look at and show off the young lady's social media. This, again, is her Twitter, so make sure that you're following Twitter right there. And then we're going to talk about the Adam Meister interview too. But there's her website. Okay, so make a note of that one. And then there is her Instagram. And there is Leah's YouTube channel. She just put up a YouTube today, by the way, today. So definitely take a look at that. All right, so we'll get ready for call in, and hopefully Skype will work. Okay, so she says I'm here. Maybe I should try to call her. What do you think? Maybe I'll try to call her and see what happens. See what happens here. Put a time check on. Oh, there she is. Okay. Hold on a second. I'm going to put you full screen here.
Awesome. Hello.
Get my headset on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
We've got you loud and clear, wall to wall. Okay, so Leah is in the house. Absolutely. Now, I gave a little overview. By the way, Bria Fit Dance is in the house as well. She's a Bitcoin young lady. And a lot of folks have some questions. And I gave already a pretty much an overview of all your social media and all that kind of good stuff. And a couple of things that I saw on your website that I definitely want to talk about after we talk about the Bitcoin thing. You mentioned something about thrift shops and going around and getting cool clothing or something. Did you mention something about that? We're going to talk about that. That's really cool. And also, I think you work for businesses. You help businesses with video.
Yeah, I just kind of do all sorts of things, but that's been a fun kind of project and thing to work
we're
on
going to
as well,
talk
yeah.
about that too, because I do some of that work, and so we're going to
Nice.
talk about that. But let's rewind, let's go back to the first time you ever heard of Bitcoin.
Ooh, well, actually, the first time I ever heard of it was probably 2012, but I
Okay.
sadly did nothing about it until 2017.
Oh,
So,
okay. Well, we all went through that process. We all heard about it at certain times and then didn't do anything. I had a friend of mine from Canada who I played tennis with a lot, and he always talked to me about it about that same time frame, 2012-ish. But he did get me to buy some in 2013. So I did buy some in
nice.
2013, and then it went up, and then it crashed down, and I went through the whole thing that we all go through, where I thought I was going to be able to time it and sell some here and then buy some back, and I didn't learn my lesson on that until I met Adam Meister, the Bitcoin
Mm.
Meister, in late 2013, and he said, "Hey, listen. Have a strong hand, just buy and hold Bitcoin. Don't try to trade. Don't try it. Just hold it, right?" And then, thank God, I listened to him, and because I think it's a fool's game to try to time the market. Okay, all right. So you heard about it, and then in 2017, I'm assuming before the big run up or during the big run up. When did you get involved in it in 2017?
Kind of early 17. So I had most of the year before the big run up,
Okay.
which was really fun. That was very exciting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the fun part is a big run up, and then the not so fun part is what happens afterwards. So tell us about that. Okay, so you got yourself some Bitcoin during the big run up, and then we had the big run up. What did you do? I mean, did you say, "Oh, I'm going to sell some of this and take some big profits," or what was your mindset at that point?
So I did not take any profits, which I'm going into this next bull run with the thought process that I'll have a plan and probably take a certain percentage profits, etc. But no, I held everything. But what's interesting is that I was almost more interested in altcoins back then because I was in the middle of the like 100x and all these
Uh-huh.
things. And
Yeah, yeah.
so I had Bitcoin, but I was more like, ooh, this is kind of a fun game. Like, let me buy all these alts.
Uh-huh.
And I got wrecked when they went down.
I'll tell you, that's how people learn. They touch the hot stove, right? That's how they learn. And I'll tell you, I was going to say something about your handle, the crypto and the handle, and I was going to say, it should be Girl Gone Bitcoin, but because here's my thought process on the altcoins, is I to this day have not heard a valid use case for
Mm,
something other than Bitcoin. And the real problem is, and this some people talk about this, but the extreme cost of the Bitcoin network. I mean, it's a lot of electricity, a lot of computing power that is going into creating that decentralized network. And nobody has the money to duplicate that. It makes no sense. There's no entity that would want to duplicate that because, first of all, they want control. They want it to be centralized. So whatever that entity is, if they created a cryptocurrency or whatever you want to call it, they certainly wouldn't want it totally distributed and independent of them, right? They would want control. So they're not going to be motivated to do it. There is nobody like a Satoshi that is going to invent something like that and then disappear. I mean, that was just like a one-off thing. And then the fact that it was able to go under the radar for so long and spread around and get as strong as it did without anybody really attacking it, any entity of substance, killing it. I don't think that can be duplicated again. And so that's why I just say, hey, I'm just going to buy and hold Bitcoin, period, and not even look at those shiny altcoin things. So how would you address what I just said?
Yeah, no, I think you make a lot of great points. And from an investment standpoint and from a currency standpoint, I would tend to agree with you that Bitcoin is really the safer and the stronger and the smarter choice. The thing I would disagree with is that there's no use case outside of Bitcoin. I think that's kind of where the difference between Bitcoin as a currency and blockchain technology can kind of come into play. There's a lot of, I think, really interesting things happening out there, like supply chain being improved by blockchain, various, we see there's so many alternative
Okay,
social media platforms.
but why would you need a blockchain? Because I mean, the idea of the Bitcoin blockchain, right, is it's totally decentralized. And so everybody's playing by the rules and nobody can dictate what's going to happen here. And so what would motivate some entity to create something like that? Why would they do it? Why wouldn't they want control? You see what I'm saying? It seems like it seems like it excludes the real reason for the blockchain that's cryptography that's designed like Bitcoin, where nobody's in control and nobody can shut it down and nobody can change the rules unilaterally. It seems like that goes against what somebody would want to create a new thing for. I mean, can you give me one example of why somebody would create something that was totally decentralized like that to do something and then not want control of it? And also, who would be motivated to do all the mining and to burn all that electricity? How would they be motivated if they're not getting Bitcoin? See, I think that's the disconnect.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that different people want different things and different entities are going to value different things. Like
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be like in my personal opinion tend
Mm-hmm.
to be like fairly similar to you where I'm a bit of a like a purist, if you will, when it comes to the full decentralization. But I do also recognize that, there's other pockets of people like, maybe they want even more privacy than Bitcoin offers. So then
Mm-hmm.
we've got privacy coins like Monero, or maybe you've got this whole like enterprise blockchain where these big companies they want to have some gates on it where there are some centralized components in order for them to utilize it because the fully transparent blockchain of Bitcoin is maybe not quite in line with what they need. And so from an ideological standpoint, I definitely think Bitcoin is the purest.
Mm-hmm.
And, like you're saying, like it has like the motivation is very different within Bitcoin. But I do see that there's places in the world for some of these other blockchains as well.
It's going to be, I'm putting us side by side here on the screen. Let me just re-up okay, there we go. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out and to see if something really comes along that makes a lot of sense to be, because when I'm talking about something like Bitcoin, I'm saying, okay, the key things are nobody's in charge. There's
Yeah.
nobody that Congress can drag in front of Congress and say, hey, we want to regulate this thing or whatever.
Hmm.
And it has enough horsepower behind it to be powerful enough that no entity can do a successful 51% attack.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like gotten to that point where it might survive. I mean, that's the whole thing with Bitcoin that I've always looked at is, will it survive? Because if it does, I think it's going to be successful, and I think those of us that own it will do all right, right? But if at some point it gets crushed by who knows who, then game over, right? And so it's going to be interesting to see if something else comes along that can get those attributes and survive and be useful, and that all those miners that would have to be maintaining that network are being compensated in such a way that it's worthwhile for them to do it. So there's a lot of pieces that have to come together there, in my opinion, for it to really make any sense. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on from that situation now, and let's go on to really what you're doing. You kind of said that you're all over the place, and so what's your main focus right now? Obviously, in your handle, crypto, and obviously you post a lot about Bitcoin. What is your real focus right now, and how are you monetizing this whole thing?
Yeah, so like you kind of alluded to, I've got all sorts of different things I'm juggling, but one of the main things I do is I do run a show, a YouTube channel where I interview people, and that's honestly been really fun just to get to meet so many people in the space, get to
Mm-hmm.
hear about so many cool things. And honestly, so I mentioned I got into Bitcoin and crypto around 2017 or early 2017. And I have been kind of slowly learning over the last, 2.5 years. And then I started my channel about 9 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount I have learned in the last 9 months from just talking to all of these really smart people has just been incredible. It's been great on like all of those things. So I do, interviews, but sometimes I'll also make tutorial videos and walkthroughs and things like that because I recognize the questions I had when I was
Mm-hmm.
first getting into the space, and I feel like I can still put that hat back on and make sure those questions are getting answered. So I really try to do that in both the interviews and the tutorial
Okay,
videos.
so you're using this to learn as much as possible, and you're following a lot of smart people like Jimmy Song and people on Twitter, right? And you're doing these interviews. But how do you monetize this whole thing?
Yeah, so it's a couple of different ways. To be honest, right now, I'm not overly worried about monetizing.
Mm-hmm.
I still work, actually, I work in the tech industry and I
Okay.
still work at a day job, like
Okay.
really for the main purpose of, I think that I don't want to put too much pressure on this to make money. Like, I think that people can tell when you're desperate to pay your bills. You know what
Okay.
I mean? And
Okay.
so I think for me, I'm okay, like just working a million hours and doing both for a while.
So you're
Um,
kind of laying the groundwork, really. You're building a foundation, you're building up your following, and you're
Right.
you're kind of looking for opportunities as they come along, type of thing. And obviously it seems like you enjoy doing it. And so work is really not work at that point if you enjoy it, right?
Oh, it's so true. Like I'll, take meetings at 7 a.m. because someone's in Europe and that works for them, and I'll be editing videos at 8 p.m. And it just, when you're just doing it because it's a natural part of your day, it doesn't feel like work, which is actually really, really cool.
Now let's talk about the videos, the video work. Now, do
hmm
you actually shoot videos yourself?
Yeah, so that was actually accidental the way that all happened. So I started my channel and I was like, you would be shocked how many crypto companies reached out to me to say, hey, we like the quality of your videos. We like the way you explain things. Can we hire you to make educational videos about our product that we can post on our own website?
Okay.
And I just was blown away at how many people were like asking if I offered that or if I did that. And I was like, well, I guess I could. And
Well, there
so
you go. And so I've noticed you've got a pretty good setup with lighting and all these things, and you've got a nice camera and all that. Where did you learn about all this?
just trial and error and a lot of YouTube videos. So
You just
I,
you just figured it was important, and so you got on it.
I think that quality really does stand out. And so that's something that I really try to take with me when I'm, making content is I think that it it's not hard to stand out, I think, in this space if you do some really engaging, quality things. And so that was just something I kind of noticed. And I was like, I could up my game. I guess I'm always trying to up my own game, if that makes
Well,
sense.
yeah, because and we talk about this on the channel sometimes. The bar is pretty low as far as most of the content out there. You know, people are shooting with their iPhone 4 feet away and using the built-in mic, and you know, maybe they've got their friend holding it and it's moving all over the place, right? And so if you can raise the quality level, especially your audio, and I notice you focus on audio, which is important, then absolutely your content is going to be way above the average, right? And then when you get up in there in that above average group, then you can kind of like keep pushing yourself up in that group. Absolutely. I think it makes all the sense in the world, and I think that video is where it's all at. I mean, I'm not surprised at all that businesses would be approaching you to do that sort of work. So absolutely, keep doing it. I mean, that's exciting. Now, how many people that you know in the real world are getting into Bitcoin, and have you noticed any trends in
Mm.
that?
It's interesting because in 2017, when things were running, I had a lot more friends asking me about it,
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, what's going on? They're hearing about it in the news and everything. And what's been kind of interesting to see is that more and more people just seem familiar. Like it's now, I feel like it's more rare if I mention something, they're like, what's Bitcoin?
Okay.
And I'm getting that less, which I think is really positive. I
Okay.
do think that the next time we have a bull run, it's going to be a flood of questions again. Um, but I do think just from being like my friend and my family, they probably know more than maybe the average because they hear me talk about it and they're curious about what I'm doing in these interviews and things like that. So,
Yeah. So you're getting the feeling that more and more people are familiar with it, but you're not getting to that point where they're just like, "Hey, how do I get some?" You're not hearing that often.
not quite. And I'll give you an example that was really interesting where people know what Bitcoin is, but they still don't quite understand how it works.
Hmm.
So, around the Bitcoin halving, the fact that they had heard that this thing was happening was impressive. But
Hmm.
my mom asked if that meant they were deleting half of the Bitcoins.
Yeah, I saw you posted. All right. Oh, was it something like, you've put so much time into this, and they're like taking away half of your Bitcoin or something? It was something
I
like
know.
that, right?
It was really cute. She's like, "Oh, you've worked so hard to collect them." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, Mom."
Oh
And then
no.
what's funny is then I had a friend the next day. They're like, "What's this halving thing? Does that mean they doubled all the Bitcoins?" And so it was like the opposite
Oh,
like
jeez.
thought
Yeah.
process.
Well, you
So,
know what's interesting is it really, the previous halving, I think, had more impact than this one, because here's the thing: as there's more and more Bitcoin out there in circulation, the fact that the number of new coins is less of an impact, because there's more coins in general, right? But really, in my opinion, what's going to make the biggest impact is if there are more and more people that decide, hey, I'm just going to hodl. I'm not going to sell.
mm,
I'm going to take my
hmm
Bitcoin off the market. And the more people that do that, that's really going to put pressure on the price, because those Bitcoin are no longer available.
Yep.
And so if we can just get more and more people to, you know, just say, I'm gonna hodl. I'm gonna take X amount of my Bitcoin, and I'm just gonna stick it in a hardware wallet or whatever, and I'm not gonna touch it for 10 years. I mean,
Mm.
that is what's going to be huge. So I think you should start talking about that a little bit on your social media, because that's going to help everybody. The more hodlers there are, the more it's going to help all the hodlers. And so, and I
Yeah.
do it a lot on my posts. I basically tell people as often as I can, hey, just buy and hold Bitcoin.
Yep.
Period. Just buy and hold Bitcoin. And somebody asked me the other day, well, when are you going to sell your Bitcoin? I said, I have no plan of ever selling my Bitcoin. Why would I sell my Bitcoin? I can use fiat to buy things. It's going down in value. Why in the world would I sell my Bitcoin that's going up in value? I mean, to me, it
hmm
makes no sense to sell the Bitcoin. And there are ways, as you know, you opened up a BlockFi account. You can get interest on your Bitcoin if you want to get some income on it. You take a risk because you're putting it in their custody, right? But
Right.
I mean, there are ways you can make money off your Bitcoin, just like any investment, right? You can do that. But my thing is, I'll sell everything else I have before I'm going to sell my Bitcoin. It's the thing that is giving a great return. Let me see if I've got
Hmm.
any comments in here because I know you're going to have to run. We're coming
And
up
I,
on
I can
6:30.
run over just a couple minutes, but just something I want to say on
Mm-hmm.
on the whole hodl thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's honestly that's 100% how I feel, and I think that it's interesting these conversations that are happening where people are like we need people to start spending Bitcoin for it to be adopted, but I'm like, how many Bitcoiners are actually spending their Bitcoin? Like I'm not wanting to spend $10,000 Bitcoin because the